fire everyone who knows what they're doing and replace it. And that's even his policy for the federal government. He says he wants to fire 75% of federal government staff. Just wipe out all the expertise. He wants to run it like a tech startup that if it fails, it's whatever, you can move on to the next project. But this is the United States. If it fails, we all go down with it.
How you doing, dude? Happy Friday, or Saturday for you now, right? Early Saturday.
Yeah, I think I'm doing okay. I'm getting ready to travel east soon, just to Odessa. I've never been to Odessa, and I was made an offer. And there's nothing particularly interesting that I want to film down there. I've said it before. I want to talk about the Odessa Mafia, but now isn't really the right time. Yeah. But if I want to see I want to be able to say that I've seen the whole country and I've gotten perspectives from the entirety of the country. And so Odessa is somewhere that I do need to kind of like check off the list. I know people are saying like, oh, go visit the beach, and like that's all nice and everything, but I'm not particularly interested in that right now.
Go get some of the waves through your hair, dude. Some of the energy. Healing.
I've swam in the Dnieper River before, which probably wasn't. I mean, I did it in Zaporozhye too, so it probably wasn't like the cleanest water. But I was with a bunch of aid workers, and we were all incredibly intoxicated. And it was like a dare, so I had to do it. As is the rule with all dares, is you have to do it.
Of course. I'm kind of jealous, dude. I kind of wanted to go into the Dnipro. Up in Kyiv, I saw people ziplining across, and the beaches just looked awesome too. People were out hanging out.
I'm surprised by the amount of outdoor activities. I went to church soccer recently. There's like this island in Kyiv where there's a lot of like kind of outside activities and a lot of like big tents where people can go and they can box, they can play soccer, they can do all types of different like extreme sports and like zip lining. A lot of fun outdoor activities in Kyiv. How have you been, man?
Dude, I've been good. I'm working the Minnesota State Fair right now. Just to try to save some extra money for my next Kyiv trip, or my next Ukraine trip, I should say. I'm not staying just in Kyiv this time. As I've been telling you, I'm actually getting closer to the east as well. I think I'm going to Kramatorsk.
Oh, Kramatorsk. I've been to Kramatorsk before. Yeah. Okay. What would you want to film there?
It's just part of the missions that we're doing with the NAFO 69th Sniffing Brigade, which I still need to get you on a truck. It's too easy. Like it'd take like not like in 2 secones, and plus you're in Kyiv right now, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Lift 99 is in Kyiv too, so
I'm in Kyiv right now. I can help out. I would just I haven't participated in any big fundraisers in a while because I've been so busy with my journalistic work. So it'd be good to do it, but I've already committed to another charity first. So I feel like I gotta do, because if I announce I'm doing this before I help them, I don't want to like sour any grapes, you know what I mean?
I feel that too. I'm the same way because it's tough taking on, dude, and then plus your journalistic work, like you just said too. I feel that 100%. So after this, we'll talk and then I'll get you hooked up. But yeah, our mission, again, I think there's going to be 14 vehicles in this NAFO convoy that we're doing. We go from Estonia down through Latvia, Lithuania, Poland into Ukraine, and then I believe this month here in August, they had to go to Kostyantynivka, which was, that's just to the west of Chasiv Yar. Like that's the next city after Chasiv Yar. Bakhmut's right there. So they got pretty damn close to the front, as close as you can without being literally with the guys, trying to get some ground back. But we got to deliver some more equipment. I got same with Nuck and Foot. Nuck and Foot's Yuri, Paul. His unit. I
think I'm vaguely familiar with the username.
Yeah, the videos. They in the Humvee. The Humvee just blew up and they all survived. Like
I saw that.
Yeah. It was like the two Humvees.
Call, man.
Yeah, I'm glad. And I met him in the hospital too. He's doing good. He's healing up. Guy had the kilt in his unit. I saw
badass. That. Yeah, the Scott.
Yeah, the combat kilt. Yeah, we met him. He's like 6'5", just a massive human, but he's so cool. Like they're all awesome guys, like super awesome. So and it's behind me here. I think I got another box too that just arrived, but we're bringing them Ear Pro and Eye Pro, eye protection and ear protection, because they don't have enough, especially the ear protection. I have like 500 of these to give out to them and whoever else needs them, because that's the one thing I've noticed too personally is there's not enough ear protection, and that is not good. And speaking from the perspective of a veteran and knowing the damage of tinnitus and and how much that could actually affect mental health as well. Because when you hear ringing all goddamn day and it doesn't go away, and it's going to cause some issues for like, and it's going to fuel PTSD and other things. So the more that we can try to mitigate that with simple things like ear pro, I feel like that's a big deal.
Oh, absolutely. I think a lot of people don't realize, and this is true for the Russians as well, obviously, even though I don't really care as much about that, but there's so many units that are saved by these kind of like personal initiatives, civilians going out there and gathering aid and delivering it to the units. I've seen so many aides transformed from like having like frostbite in their hands during the winter time to getting good coats, good gloves, good boots, just because it got a little bit of attention online. It sucks that this is the way that it works, but when you're fighting a war of this scale, the largest war in Europe in World War II, in a state that isn't exactly one of the most wealthy countries in the world, this type of stuff is very, very important. And I mean, that early wave of support that Ukraine got, it just isn't the same anymore. It isn't popping up in the search algorithm like it used to be. And so for the people who are still focusing on Ukraine, it really feels like we have to redouble our efforts to make up for the people who are no longer paying attention, both to bring awareness to it and also doing these convoys and helping people out.
And that's the balance I'm trying to figure out, man, is like, you know, the bringing awareness to direct help. You know what I mean? Because yeah, I could sit here and bring awareness, you know, all day, and it's great. People that just do that and they're involved in that, and like that's their power that they can do is just bring as much awareness, you know, retweeting things, sharing things, being involved in pro-Ukraine communities online, you know, combating misinformation, bonking, you know, if you got like admin mod powers and shit, you know what I mean? Just that type of shit. But me personally, like I like to go a little bit more above and beyond personally, right? It's not everyone has to, but I feel that for sure, balancing the two.
It's like I don't work for any of these big news corporations like CNN, MSNBC. Not that I particularly want to. I mean, if they made me a big enough dollar offer, you never know. But I like having the amount of independence that I do, where I can choose if I want to join an aid convoy, if I so choose. That I can blur the line between journalist and just a human being being a human being a lot more, because I understand that in a lot of journalistic circles, having a journalist, you know, get involved and starting to do stuff and you know, helping in that way, it might be viewed as like interrupting the story. It's not true for all major news organizations, but it's very hard for me to separate myself from these situations when I'm there. I want to help when I'm there. If there's aid that needs to be stored in the car, I'm naturally just going to start picking the stuff and storing it in the car. If there's stuff that needs to be done, then there's stuff that needs to be done. But I always need to make sure that I balance that with making sure that my coverage is impartial to the best case that it can be. But my impartiality should not be mistaken for a lack of bias, because I do have bias. I'm biased towards a nation that was obviously invaded and is facing like brutal colonialism and imperialism. But that's because I'm a human being. And I understand, and that's like the main thing I deal with, or I sometimes will get critiques for when people see my coverage, is because it's sometimes they'll see me like doing aid or like helping in certain ways or directing people towards donations. They'll say this is very biased. I would just imagine going to like American Allied reporters during World War II while they were landing on Normandy, saying, "So, are you biased towards the Americans winning today?" Like,
literally, bro.
It would be dishonest for them to say no, and it would be dishonest for me to say no. I think it's better for them to know those biases up front and for me to be honest about it.
Yeah, man, and that's the lesson that I've had to learn. I fucked up when I started, right? Because I started during the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests in Minneapolis and the riots and shit. So I fucked up. I had this right wing audience reshare my streams right away, so I got a massive following. And I told them all, I'm like, I'm going to be this unbiased journalist and I'm going to go into it, dude. And I had this, I just was this green, like I thought I was going to do it. And I tried. And I do feel like my journal, like when I'm filming things and when I'm reporting it, I'm doing it as impartial as possible. But when I started though, I thought I could just be all the way around unbiased, never have an opinion on anything, be a robot, no emotion. And it's impossible. Like I learned that right away, immediately when I saw how, especially when the mainstream media in certain circles or in certain pathways, usually on the fringe, will report on things and lie about it. And when I'm out there now myself and I'm seeing things and I'm seeing nonviolent actions taking place, and then the news is reporting it as, look at these riots, when I'm like, dude, I lived through the riots. Like, I know what the riots look like. People are out here just protesting and marching with signs at this point. Okay. There's no riots happening, but yet there was still an energy there. And then people will go, oh, you're just being biased and shit. I'm like, bro, what are you talking about? I'm reporting what I'm talking about with my own eyes now. But like, I feel that for sure.
I would like people to look at my coverage, or at least the majority of my coverage, definitely when it comes to my film and stuff, as the war through my eyes, in a way. While I'm going to include a lot of information and credible sources, I'm going to always try to do that. I would never purposefully lie to my audience, and I'm always going to do the work to make sure that I don't, by accident, lie or spread disinformation to my audience. But I'm one person with one perspective that only have seen what I can't see in this war. I haven't seen every interaction. I haven't seen every war crime. I haven't seen everything that I've seen. So I always tell people, and this is the best way I think they should approach my work, and I think a lot of other freelance journalists, and just journalists period, in the war in Ukraine, as just one source amongst many. If people treat my journalism as just one place where they can go see certain perspectives about the war, and certain view like experiences about the war shared through the stories of the people I interview or through what I film, then I think that my stuff can be productive. I don't want people to just watch my stuff to be like, oh, I want to keep up with the war, so I'm only going to watch Dylan Burns. I know that's not the smartest thing to say, but it's also the best thing to say. Because again, I'm only one person. I can only show that one perspective. So as long as I'm continuing to encourage people to go to other sources and to even read Russian blog posts. Now, that doesn't mean you need to read that to agree with it. I think you going and reading it and seeing how demented that stuff is would make you more supportive of Ukraine. At least that was my experience. That's why I tell people all the time, go watch Russian state TV. Go listen to what they say about the gays and the transgender Nazi NATO super soldiers in Ukraine. It's bizarre. It's wacko land. When I listen to Russian state TV, I don't know if you ever play a lot of GTA. It sounds like the GTA radio station sometimes, with how unbelievably bizarre and like out of this world it gets. So I hope that people, when they approach my work, definitely since I am open about my biases, which I hope people appreciate to some extent, it can just be one puzzle piece for the entire gigantic mosaic that is the war in Ukraine.
Absolutely. Definitely. I feel that, man. I mean, ironically, during my stream, we watch most streams. Some nights I don't feel like it, but we do watch a clip of the Russian state media. I call it the Cope segment. We watch their messaging, or somebody like we watched Vivek's. I've been seeing you just roasting the fuck out of that. I hate bro that, tell me why I pulled up your chat just because I can read your chat, but then immediately I just see a big fat photo of Hinkle and Vivek right next to each other. I'm like, oh, I already know he's cooking right now. Like, oh, I gotta get my stream going.
Man, I gotta say, man, when it comes to Vivek Ramaswamy, that dude gets under my skin in a way that no other candidate on the campaign trail gets under my skin. And the reason why is he just feels like a pencil neck upstart, you know, some geek who comes from, I don't know, like venture capital or like the tech sector, and feels like he can treat the country like a fledgling tech startup, right? And can approach every issue from that perspective. And he's learning everything like a babe walking on ice for the first time. And he'll even say this on podcasts if you actually follow him around, because he'll agree to like everything, like almost every show possible. And so he talks a lot, and he's like open about this. Like, he only voted until like 2 elections ago, meaning me at the age of 22 have participated in the same amount of elections as Vivek Ramaswamy.
That's crazy.
Has he participated in his local elections even? Does he know who's his mayor? And did he vote for him, or did they vote against him? Do we have any idea? How deep is his civic engagement? Is this just all a marketing ploy? I have no clue. Up until 2021, after the January 6th riots, he said it was a terrible catastrophe. He wrote that in a book. So it's not just something that slipped out of his mouth. He wrote it down and published it. So he must have believed it. 2 years later, he's talking about arresting Joe Biden and his son for life, pardoning the Trumps preemptively before he's even seen the evidence. Where did that flip come from? And it's not the only issue that he's treated like this. Vladimir Putin, earlier, he called him a bully, and that the only way you can stand up to a bully is by bloodying his nose. And that we need to make America energy independent to combat this type of stuff. 2 years later, where is he now? we need to give all of Ukraine over to the Russians, and this new type of Nixonite like reach out to the Russians instead of the Chinese. None of it makes any sense. If you dig down to any of what he's saying, it's all the most surface level. Like, I would imagine if you take somebody and you throw an idea at them and you give them no time, no frame of like to think or research or do anything, and they just come up with a plan with the most basic of information about it. That's how I feel like he's getting to these conclusions. For like, let me give you a few examples.
Go ahead.
Because there's two major things he said recently that have gotten under my skin, but there's a million things he said that's gotten under my skin. For example, when he said like that the aid we were sending, the javelins, were going from Ukraine to the cartels in Mexico to then be used against the Mexican government. Then you look at the footage, it's an AT-4. It's not a javelin, it's an AT-4. It's a totally different country that produces it. I mean, it's just, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Could you imagine somebody asking to like own a gun store, and then they say, yeah, I love this AK-47 here, and they hold up an AR-15. That's the equivalent of what he did there. He wants to be in charge of a foreign policy. He can't even get the story straight. But the big thing that has confused me about the handing over of Ukraine to Russia is exactly how is this supposed to be in the United States' benefit? I don't understand how it's supposed to be in the United States' benefit, because his plan is that we give Ukraine to the Russians, so then the Russians will turn on the Chinese, which is America's main threat. Therefore, 4D chess, we might be heartless bastards, but we're rich, heartless bastards. That's the idea, right? Problem is, America holds 59% of the world's reserve currency. Second is Europe, 20% of the world's reserve currency in the euro. Very powerful economy, and also, importantly, gigantic trading partner with the Chinese. The Germans are very reliant on Chinese trade. And the Germans also might be entering a recession, and they're not the only ones.
Ooh.
And so if you're going to turn on Ukraine and hand it over to the Russians and compromise European security interests to get the Russians to turn on the Chinese, how do you keep the Europeans on your side on this issue? How are you going to get them to commit to care about American security interests if you don't care about their security interests and you're not a good ally? Why would the Germans stick out their neck for you when you just 180'd on Ukraine and embarrassed them on the international stage? And that's assuming that there's a Sino-Soviet split type situation to even take advantage of, which there isn't. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And that's what Vivek's trying to sell to everyone. Putin is the new Mao, right? That's what he said. Like, what a dumb fucking statement. And then also channeling Richard Nixon. Both of those moves, I'm just like, okay, this guy, that's just, like him channeling Richard Nixon.
He really likes criminal presidents, huh?
Yeah, he really does. He has a thing for that. And dude, Chris Christie with the calling him Chat GPT, I think that was a good one. That was perfect. My chat was cooking him, calling him. This guy sounds like a used car salesman. Like it sounds like he's selling fake ideas, but 100%. The whole argument
crypto
of trying
salesman.
to,
I think crypto salesman,
crypto bro salesman, 100%. The whole idea of trying to side with Putin to end this again, this new Sino-Soviet split that he's saying that exists, this military alliance that Russia and China have or whatever, and that siding with Putin will help cripple China. I have no idea where he's even getting this from. I have no clue.
I was watching, the reason I was watching that Hinkle that Tinkler interview with Tinkle and Ramaswamy was because they were talking about China, which is something that they actually disagree about. And listening to Ramaswamy explain his logic on why he's taking this approach on Ukraine to China, it's so just evident he doesn't know what he's talking about. I think the big thing that got me was that he wants us to stop sending money to Ukraine because it's expensive and it's not worth it in a national security interest. It's not good for the United States. That's his idea. So he's willing to give up the Ukrainians to the Russians to turn the Russians against the Chinese. It's against America's national security interest to spend 0.3 to 0.4% of our GDP to support Ukraine in defeating the Russians. It's too expensive to spend 3.5% of our military budget when we're doing 26 billion military budget increases every year anyway. Okay, whatever.
Cold War era weapons too.
Cold War era weapons. Many of them you can't convert into cash anyway. Talking about M113 troop carriers. Whatever, that's his position. Move over to China. His position on China, his unironic position on China, is to ban every single U.S. company from trading with any Chinese company until they change their position on Taiwan. And until they agree to participate in the global capitalist structure. That was his point, that they need to abide by the rules of international trade. And if they do not, then he's going to ban every single American company from trading with the Chinese, which I don't think anyone needs to be an economist to understand would be an economic catastrophe. And so
that's not gonna work.
He's not willing to spend 0.3% of our GDP to support the Ukrainians, but because it's not in our national security interest, but it is within America's national security interest, while we're finally at a rate of 3.5 to 5.5% GDP growth, to smash our economy into the mountainside right after COVID. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't. None of his policies or anything makes sense. He's just going for the shock factor. He's trying to get that fringe audience, I believe. He's honestly, he was trying to copied a lot of Trumpisms from 2016 during that debate as well. But yeah, my chat was mostly catchphrases too from many of them. Tim Scott trying to be like Obama 2.0, it was hilarious. But yeah, my chat was interested mostly to hear their opinions on Ukraine and who would support Ukraine, because they're trying to, I don't know, maybe they don't want to vote for Biden or something, so they're trying to look elsewhere.
Did you hear his position on Afghanistan and Ukraine?
Is this Vivek? Vivek?
After the debate, he was getting grilled by different reporters. The reporters were asking him as he was walking around his positions, and one of them asked him, like, why don't you want to support Ukraine? Very blunt way to put it, and he gave a 30-second answer, but his point was that if we keep sending weapons to Ukraine, then it's going to end up like Afghanistan, and we're going to get a post-Zelensky warlord ruling over the country.
Bro, Afghanistan and Ukraine are not even in like the same conversation in terms of like a cultural structure, the country, how it's ran, all of it. Like, to even make that comparison was just dumb as fuck. It was the one, and I know exactly which one you're talking about now.
It doesn't make sense in
and that's just the first point. And then the other point too is obviously there's no U.S. troops in Ukraine. We're not sending the top level military aid or the military support that we were using in Afghanistan at all in Ukraine. Like, we're sending Cold War era weapons.
I think his point is that, like the Mujahideen, we're gonna flood the country with weapons, and then one day it's all gonna, like, I guess, fall apart, and it's going to be bad. And then maybe, I don't know, we're going to have Azov flying planes into the White House. I don't know. But the thing that really gets me is he just views like all countries and all wars as the same. That's the only way you could come to that conclusion. Afghanistan has its population centers distributed between extremely steep mountain ranges that makes it very difficult for any central authority to have power over the country. And that has been the problem with Afghanistan even before the Soviet invasion. That was the problem that the monarchy was facing before the communist uprising. That was the problem that every single power that has ruled Afghanistan has had. And that's why there's so much local tribal power, and there's so much power in the locality there. And that's part of the reason why terror groups are able to flourish in Afghanistan so much. Compare that to Ukraine, when you've got a centralized government that has more control over their military than ever, certainly more than in 2014 and 2015, that has a popular central government, a democratic government that has had multiple peaceful transfer of power, where the people who lose, like Petro Poroshenko, for example, hand over the reins of power. And this was achieved locally. This was achieved locally, not through an invasion, and we like overtook the government and forced and like installed it. It was achieved locally. So there's no comparison here. It's just, in his mind, he knows that Americans remember the war in Afghanistan, and they know that it didn't go well, and they're scared of another one. So he's just trying to say it's the same to scare them and get their attention. He is quite literally a used car salesman for this, in the way you described it, because he's selling something that is junk, and he knows it's junk. He's just throwing it out there to scare people.
Exactly, or be a distraction. And it's crazy because he's pandering to the same type of people that were all for as many U.S. troops and aid to Afghanistan. You know what I mean? When it was in the heat of it, like, those same people would have been all for it. And now it's when it's no U.S. troops and it's old weapons and it's to America, it's beneficial for America to assist Ukraine and assist an ally, like you've already laid out clearly. right? In more ways than one, to be aiding Ukraine. It's in the Budapest memorandum. I just pull out the Budapest memorandum on them.
It's an easy W, isn't it?
Yeah, easy W. Here you go. You know, then I don't even need to really spend too much time on it because it's as simple as that. You know what I mean?
I mean, I believe that Euro-Atlantic security and prosperity is the basis of American prosperity and security. Maybe it's a traditional outlook. I mean, I was raised by my grandparents. Maybe it's a more traditional outlook, but I think our relationship with the European Union, which again, 59% United States, world reserve currency, US dollar, 20%, the next one, it's the euro. Very powerful economy. It would be great for us to have a trading partner in the Ukrainians. It would be great for us to have a partner that agrees with our values. And we know that democratic liberal societies make the most prosperous countries on the planet. You know, those countries can have divisions and they still have problems. What was it that Winston Churchill said? Not a gigantic fan of Winston Churchill, but Winston Churchill did have a very wise quote when he said that democracy was like the best of all the worst systems. It was something, he said something along those lines. I believe you know what I'm talking about.
I've heard it. Let me look it up. What are you talking about?
I believe that our relationship with a country that has a burgeoning tech sector and is, I think, fiercely devoted to its democracy is going to be very positive. I think it's going to be positive to add 44 million people to the European Union and hopefully rebuild their country so we can trade and prosper and flourish together. I mean, that's what worked with the rebuilding of Europe and helped America become the economic powerhouse that it was post World War II. So I mean, that's just a few reasons. There's like other reasons I can get into. I don't think the Russians are going to stop with this. I think they have other interests on other locations and other wars they would want to wage. At least definitely Putin's regime, that they've been pretty open about their interests. But I just think Vivek Ramaswamy, even though I don't like Mike Pence, I'm not a huge fan of Nikki Haley, I think they were very right to say that he's a rookie. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't have any experience. And so he's trying to make his lack of experience a selling point, which is like a cute marketing trick. But your solution for if we have failed when it comes to a foreign policy issue or any issue where expertise didn't end up going well, because I think most people don't like the war in Iraq. Most people agree that the war in Afghanistan did not go the way we want. And so his solution is throw out the expertise and treat it like a tech startup. Fire everyone who knows what they're doing and replace it. And that's even his policy for the federal government. He says he wants to fire 75% of federal government staff. Just wipe out all the expertise. He wants to run it like a tech startup that if it fails, it's whatever, you can move on to the next project. But this is the United States. If it fails, we all go down with it. If we were to have a situation where you hire a plumber to your house to come over to your house and fix your pipes, right? And he doesn't do a good job, the solution isn't, guess I should hire somebody who has no clue what they're doing and just hope it goes well. Obviously, hiring somebody with expertise wasn't successful, so I'll just hire somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. The solution is find somebody with a different perspective on how to fix the problem, but is also an expertise and knows what they're doing. Not don't hire this used car salesman.
Right. 100%. Nailed it on the head. Everything I had. I don't take notes when I watch this shit, but listening to it, reacting to it, my chat was watching. Just a clown, to be honest. And then the people he's entertaining, like Haxon, it's sad. I hope he's going to Russia and flying there. Speaking of flying, Prigozhin.
Yeah,
Prigozhin.
He's done. He's done so.
He gone. He's out. Let's talk about it. So I covered it when it was happening and it broke, and people were confused at first, and he was on the flight log and they weren't sure if it was legitimate information coming from the state media. But holy shit, this is a big deal. It actually is.
Gigantic deal. So for those of you who don't know, a few days ago at about 5:46 p.m., Prigozhin's personal plane full of a bunch of Wagner's top staff, including Dmitry Utkin and financial managers that manage the shell companies which Wagner has operated in Africa for not for decades, but for like almost the past decade. They had filed into this plane, including like a few plane staff and stuff like that, and they started flying towards St. Petersburg, where the Wagner office is. That at about 6:11 p.m., the plane, according to its flight tracking data, started very quickly plummeting to the ground in about 30 seconds before crashing and exploding. Now, there's been some footage on the ground that was recorded by locals where the locals were saying that they heard an explosion. So that's where, we first got the idea that there might have been some foul play, was when the locals said they heard an explosion, and they filmed the plane falling from the ground, where you can see from a side profile of the plane, it looks like it's possibly missing one of its wings. And there seems to be a cloud where some people have said that it might have been a kind of shoulder-mounted missile to take it down. And early U.S. intel reports did say that it was probably that. Now intel reports have changed, and now they're saying it was probably a planted bomb or maybe some other form of sabotage. Some people are trying to say, but that doesn't explain the cloud. The cloud could be that the plane was falling in that direction, and that cloud was actually caused by the plane. I've listened to some analysts talk about that. I think it was a credible explanation, so that could explain.
You're talking about that cloud that was seen on the left of the image. Yeah. I'm trying to pull it up. Keep going.
So I think that it's pretty obvious when you look at just the tiny bit of evidence we have and the interests that were at play. Wagner obviously had that mutiny against the central government. Prigozhin marched on the capital, killed over 20 Russian airmen, seemingly got no repercussions. Putin was really kind of judged by the more conservative elements of Russian politics as kind of looking pretty weak. People started making contingency plans. People were questioning if, there was no flank in Russia from what they were doing in Ukraine. If it was really that easy to march on Moscow, how strong really is the central government's hold on power? But now, 2 months later, not only is Prigozhin dead, but Utkin, the neo-Nazi who managed the military training, is dead. Many of those who managed the shell companies are dead. Like, all of Wagner's top leadership is dead. The head of the snake was completely cut off. So
it's gonna have major ramifications too for their battlefield operations, because the Wagner Group was the only Russian offensive unit that was actually taking ground. But they had to level it in order to do so. So I say that very lightly. But they still were able to take the terrain. This is huge for their combat capabilities as well.
I mean, I saw New Voice of Ukraine, not New Voice of Ukraine. It was Kiev Independent was saying that Wagner basically ceased to exist as it once was. It's like the organization's been gutted. Its leadership has been beheaded. It's in a sorry state to what it once was, and that's probably part of the reason why we saw those videos of the Wagner guys unbelievably upset. I don't know if you saw that one guy weeping, and the giant burial, that the giant monument they've done outside of the St. Petersburg office. Somebody even was kind enough to bring a sledgehammer, to remember the good old days of mutilating and torture. That
just disgusting.
They're gonna miss those days so bad. I don't want to speculate too much about who did it. Obviously, planes spontaneously combust all the time. I've survived at least 7 spontaneous plane combustions, right? So, we've all been there before. But if your mind is going to do a little speculating, most people are probably assuming that this was done by Vladimir Putin. And I do think he is most likely culprit. He has the most reason to want Prigozhin and a lot of Wagner leadership dead. If somebody's willing to challenge you once, they're likely willing to challenge you again. He made him look incredibly weak. He killed 20 Russian airmen, which I think is sometimes underemphasized.
Exactly.
On how humiliating that is.
7 helicopters.
I think it was 7 helicopters, a Russian command aircraft. There's footage of it just spiraling to the ground. And they really humiliated him, and how desperate he got to the point that they were like digging ditches in the middle of the road to try to slow down Wagner's advance. I think he has the clear most benefit of the situation. There's other people who could have benefited too, though. Namely, and I don't think this is going to surprise anyone, Shoigu, the defense minister, and Gerasimov, the chief of staff. They have clear interests in wanting him gone. They've wanted him gone for a very long time. In fact, they have been the most consistent Prigozhin and Wagner haters, right?
Yeah.
Like if they were, if like all of this was like Twitter, they'd constantly be in the replies, like spamming slurs and spamming insults. They're constantly hating on him. They don't like him because
do you think it's because Putin can control Shoigu more, and he cannot control, or he couldn't control Prigozhin anymore?
I think that any type of challenge to Putin in the way that Prigozhin did it, is going to be viewed, I think, as a death sentence by most people, and by the fact that it wasn't was very surprising, and it, I think, threatened the security of the regime. And so he saw it as like they had to snuff him out in order to keep the regime secure, to make the regime look strong, and to get rid of, you know, the loose ends, quote unquote. Whereas as Shoigu, I mean, he didn't march on the Capitol. He's been a close ally of Putin for a very, very long time. And also knows that he's extremely unpopular. And without Putin, I don't really know many people are going to stick their neck out for Shoigu or Gerasimov right now.
No, not at all. Not from what we're seeing. It seems like a lot of the extra pro-imperialist people, you know, that are actually like for, you know what I mean? Because there's like obviously the everyday Russians that are like just pro-Putin. They're Vatniks. But then there's like the actual, like, let's fucking genocide these Ukrainians type, that these Telegram channels that are disgusting, right? And they are like, they're pro Prigozhin, and they were kind of not for this Kremlin establishment, I guess. I was kind of noticing that, like, it's weird within this criminal type of a government, you know, within this swamp of a government with Putin and that there's still an echelon of, well, Putin and the Duma and the leadership in the Kremlin are kind of like the establishment, and Prigozhin and others were kind of viewed as this alternative.
The problem is for Putin is that the problems that caused the rise of Prigozhin in the first place, outside of maybe a lack of attentiveness to how much Prigozhin was roasting Shoigu, Gerasimov, and the rest of them, all those problems still exist. There's still ammo shortages. There's still problems with the logistics. Morale still in the can. There's still terrible command. There's constant complaints from people on the front line for not being rotated out, of not getting their proper pay, of the poor condition of their equipment, which is only worsening as they bring out more and more old Soviet stockpiles, including, I don't know if you saw that. I don't know if that T10 is going to be on the front lines. Okay. I don't know if I don't know if that's gonna be sent to take back Robotny or something.
What are they doing with that?
Or if it's just gonna be in some indirect fire roll, or what it's gonna be. But I mean, that's not the best sign. I mean, it works. If it can make it work, like if Ukrainians had it, they'd use it. Yeah, but when you're supposedly the second most powerful military in the world, you think you're not gonna be using 70-year-old tanks.
My favorite was seeing like the dust, and like it looked like some rust just coming off of it while it got off of the trailer.
It did look like rust. I noticed that. Oh my god! I don't know how they even allowed anybody to post that. But all those issues still exist, and so I feel like it's less that Prigozhin was like the Pied Piper. He was a decent marketer, right? But I mean, I think it was that he voiced a lot of criticisms that had merit from the Russian soldiers' perspective on how the war was being run ineffectively. And if those issues didn't have merit, then he wouldn't have nearly gotten as popular, his videos wouldn't have gotten as many views as they were, and he wouldn't have probably felt like he could even attempted the thunder run on Moscow in the first place. So I don't think that the issues that led to his rise and all of these problems in the first place have necessarily gone away. Let me give you another example. I don't know if you're familiar with Rusich. They're actually a subpart of Wagner. Most people don't know that, but they're a Russian neo-Nazi militia that's been fighting in Ukraine since 2014. Their co-leader just got arrested in Finland. Why was he in Finland? Some people are speculating it was to see a significant other. We don't know. But this guy was managing their training, and he's been fighting in Ukraine since 2014. And these are some bad cats. They've been engaged in war crimes for a very long time, posting videos of beheadings, like some jihadi level of like barbarism. And I've read a lot of their blog posts. These guys are open neo-Nazis. That guy's captured in Finland. He's the co-leader of the organization, been fighting for the last 8-9 years. The Russian consulate doesn't really do anything, according to them. And now Finland's going to extradite him to Ukraine, where he faces 20 years to a lifetime in prison for war crimes and terrorism. And this so offended Rusich that they've now posted that they're just leaving Ukraine. They're disengaging. They're not going to fight anymore if the government isn't going to fight for them. Now, I'm not saying that all the other groups are going to necessarily follow their path, or that even they might not 180 under some pressure, or something else, right? What I am saying is that discontent is still there. The issues that led to Prigozhin's rise are still there. And all of those issues don't have now is a figurehead to unite around.
That's what it is they don't have that leader at the very top. But I think that's why Putin did what he did and took out Prigozhin. But also now, I've also seen that they're demanding the members of the Wagner Group sign contracts or pledge allegiance to the Russian flag now. So they just full out just took Prigozhin out and are just taking the Wagner Group now into the Russian, they're going to be Russian army. They have to go out into the positions, I bet. What do you think?
I mean, this isn't surprising.
No.
I saw that the Wagner cemetery was demolished, and some people are covering it a little weird. They're not including all the context. They're not like desecrating all the bodies. They're going to move the bodies now to official Russian cemeteries. It seems like, you know, the process of denazification or de-Stalinification, you know, when they started opening up and getting rid of the cult of personality, it feels like they're going through a little bit of de-Prigozhinification or what, I don't know what you would call it, but kind of like, oh, I mean, you know, he existed. We'll give him a little bit of praise, but then we're almost going to like pretend he never even existed. We're not, I mean, I don't know how you saw they treated the evidence site, but they were not that concerned with gathering the correct evidence about how Prigozhin got killed. And this is ruffling a lot of feathers amongst the Russian military. This is Russian, maybe not the high command, but of the average Russian soldier. Some people hate Wagner and they don't care, but a lot of people see this as like, we're backstabbing each other when we should be fighting the evil gay Ukrainians.
Exactly. 100%. Like it's the infighting. But I've seen the infighting. A lot of people at first were confused. They thought it was like a show, that the Russians are just trying to put a side show on to distract people from what they really wanted to do in Ukraine. I'm like, I don't think so, because like what you had mentioned earlier, when he was posting videos bitching about Shoigu and Gerasimov, look what you're doing to us, right? I'm like, oh man, like you guys, they really think that there's some serious infighting going on, and they're not controlling it. Like they have big Telegram channel followings, like they have some influence outside of the Kremlin sphere of influence, and I don't know how long the Kremlin's going to allow that and tolerate that. Go ahead.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I was just gonna say really quick. It seemed like it came to its culmination, obviously, when Prigozhin took the Wagner Group into Rostov, and then did what he was gonna do, did what he said he was gonna do. Go ahead.
I would love to be that CIA agent, in Russia right now, trying to hype up the remaining Wagner guys. Like, come on, you're gonna let him disrespect you like that? I can't believe that. You're on your turf, on your man's. Like, I want to see that CIA agent conversation.
So you're just gonna let Putin do that to your man's?
Yeah, I can't believe that. You're
just gonna let Putin do that, huh?
You're gonna he's snatching your pockets, man. I can't believe that.
Damn, Wagner.
But I've noticed that a lot of the old Russian nationalist guard are getting screwed recently. I mean, Prigozhin's dead, Utkin's dead, Igor Strelkov, or Igor Girkin, he's arrested for airing many of the same criticisms that Prigozhin did. The co-founder of Rusich, one of the oldest neo-Nazi movement fighting in Ukraine, he's arrested, probably getting extradited to Ukraine. Done. It just seems like a lot of the old Russian nationalist guard that participated in setting this whole thing into motion kind of laid their bed and got kind of turned into a mousetrap. They're
dead and gone. Here today, gone tomorrow. If they didn't invade Ukraine and bring themselves to commit imperialism and genocide upon the Ukrainian people, they might, be committing imperialism and genocide somewhere else. But they wouldn't have been doing it in Ukraine and might still be at least alive doing their imperialism.
I really wish they let Gherkin continue his podcast, though, because there was nothing better than me and my buddies getting really, very intoxicated and then just watching Gherkin just be like, the Jews are making us lose, just like for like an hour and a half. Oh my God. It would just,
it's unhinged, huh?
It is unbelievably unhinged. It's like one moment he's just saying, the war is lost, everything's dying, we're getting creamed, it's so bad, it's so disgusting. But man, I hate those homosexuals and Jews, and it'll just go on random bigoted rants. like in intersplice. It's really.
Is he the old guy? Because there's another old guy too on our state media segments where it'll come out of nowhere where they'll be talking and they'll be like, yeah, it's because of the gay Ukrainian military. I'm like, where did that come from? What do you? And it's just they come up with these narratives, these hateful narratives. But I mean, here I feel like I can just get that watching Steve Bannon. To be honest, like
that's true. That's the thing. When I listen to the American right talk about like Ukrainian neo-Nazism and like the Ukrainian far right,
Steve Bannon.
When I've met the Ukrainian far right, because those people do exist, like the actual Ukrainian far right, most of them just sound like Matt Walsh, man.
Yeah.
Like I'll talk to them and they'll be like, Dylan, I know you're into politics. You listen to Jordan Peterson. Like that's the type of comments I'll get.
Yeah, I've heard that as well when I was there from some of them. Jordan Peterson is a big one.
I do like Jordan Peterson, man.
Yeah, they like him. They really do. I feel it's just because it's like they haven't gone all the way down the red pill rabbit hole yet. I hope they don't. I really don't. But that's like the shaft part, and like you're in Jordan Peterson, and then you're gonna keep going further down. It's gonna get worse. So
the last comment on the Wagner thing on Prigozhin being dead. Well, two last comments. First one is I'm wondering about if Prigozhin acted as kind of like a pressure valve, with there being so many problems with the Russian military having nobody now there to kind of like point them out. If there's going to be zero pressure to fix any of these issues. I don't know if you've been following, but the 205th, the Russian 205th, they're getting creamed right now in Kherson. They've been told, according to Russian sources, to march into the marshland, the swampland, the islands amongst the Dnieper River without artillery support, and they're getting encircled, captured, smashed. They're not being allowed to retreat as they're begging to retreat. They've resorted to like airdropping them chocolate bars just so they have something to eat. And actually, one of the PMC fighters for one of the groups that was involved in the shelling of the aid workers I was embedded with actually got captured. In fact, it was one of the drone pilots, so it might have actually even been one of the people who was involved in striking us down in Kherson, which we'll never know if it was exactly because we don't know exactly who did it. But it's a pleasant thought. But those types of problems, who's going to be the ones to call that out or try to bring any attention to it to make it so somebody addresses it? Is there going to be anyone? Is there going to be any pressure valve? There's going to be any domestic pressure to deal with these issues? Or is Shoigu and Gerasimov basically able to, live the high life, not address any of these issues with no domestic pressure to fix them outside of what comes from Putin? And who's telling Putin about what is an issue and what isn't an issue? Because if Putin's in a bunker, not getting told about the war from Shoigu and Gerasimov and a few others, if they don't include the real issues, then he's not going to fix the real issues. And what motivation do a lot of these ghouls have to tell them that they're doing a shit job?
Exactly, and that's why they ironically killed them both. Well, they haven't killed Gherkin yet, but I mean, they've taken him out of circulation for propaganda or whatever, for crying, I guess. And then obviously Prigozhin's dead now, and he was the localized internal, like, yo, like things are fucked up. And that's why also I think he gained more prominence, because people in the West, like myself, I mean, we had to, in a way, the Wagner Group and Prigozhin's crying and coping in videos were revealing what was actually going on. You know what I mean? Because obviously the Russian media and the Russian messaging is bullshit and they're lying. But through Prigozhin's cries and also Gherkin's crying, there was a narrative of what was really happening at least being shown. And I feel like Putin and the Kremlin saw that as well. And we can't have that. So like you said, yeah, it's very interesting. There's nobody now after Gherkin being arrested and likely will be killed, maybe. We'll see. And then Prigozhin being killed, there is no more... there isn't anyone with the voice of saying, yo, this is bad. We're getting our ass kicked out here.
I'm reading reports from Russian soldiers that this officer will stand up and say, no, I will not send my soldiers on this suicide mission. And then they'll just fire him, replace him with somebody who will give the order. And that's that. And that seems to be the state of affairs right now, that anybody who stands up and criticizes the current state of affairs of how the Russian military is being run, they basically just get shit canned. And then they replace them with some loyalist who'll do whatever their boss tells them to do. They seem to. I'm very happy I'm not a Russian soldier.
I agree. I served in the U.S. military, and we thought Russia was the second army in the world. Oh my God, dude! Like, I put some republic's army ahead of them now. Some random republic out there. Pick one. And I bet you their military is more cohesive in terms of like their ground forces. Obviously, Russia's terrorism and their terrorist actions of laying multiple layers of mines, which you've seen with your own eyes. And then the artillery. Beyond that, though, when it comes time to like fight and get in a firefight between Ukrainian soldiers and the Russians in their positions, we're seeing it almost every day now of Russians running or getting absolutely their shit pushed in when the Ukrainians pull up on those positions and take them. They go back and just absolutely assault these positions. We talked about it, Nuckenfut's Yuri. I mean, they lost that Humvee. They lost that whole crew in there, but they were actually still able to take the Russian position. 2 of them, actually. So the Russian military is dog shit, absolute dog shit. There's no morale. There's no central mission anymore other than just try to stop Ukraine everywhere from liberating territory at this point. There is one offensive area that isn't really being talked about much, and that is a Russian push up in the Serbiansk forest. That's over by Liman, but they're having 0 successes at all over there. That's over by the Kharkiv counteroffensive area. They had evacuated Kupiansk, at least reports of it. But beyond that, I'm seeing nothing showing the Russians have any successes in this attempted offensive over here.
I really hope that the lack of quality in the Russian armed forces right now will be their undoing. But like historically, in many of the wars Russia won, they didn't win it through, the most precise, brilliant strategic warfare. A lot of the wars they won by basically taking a giant club and just hammering everything that's alive until, they win. They did that in Afghanistan and failed. They did that in Grozny and succeeded, at least the second time around. So necessarily, like, them having not the best quality of troops won't necessarily mean that they fail the war. This is something I always want to communicate with people. So when I talk to soldiers, the Ukrainian soldiers I talk to don't tell me the war's won, or like the war's already won, or we got this. It's like all under control. They make it very clear to me that this war could still be lost and this war could still be won. Not lost in the way the Russians originally thought, but lost in the way that the world stops caring. They stop making commitments, and that eventually, like, people are like, is it really worth? That type of stuff is still possible, and that type of grinding warfare is extremely damaging to any soldier's mentality, of like any soldier's psyche. And you can only push people through that type of combat for so long before they break, right? So I don't think that the war is necessarily won. And another thing that I brought up last time that really will always scare me is, even if you don't want to fight, getting beaten to death with a sledgehammer is a hell of a motivation. If you watch those gladiator movies back in the day, right, those people aren't fighting necessarily because they love fighting. A lot of them are fighting because they got no choice and they know they'll die otherwise, so they're going to fight to the death and they're going to fight hard, right? And so a lot of these soldiers, I want to make sure that we make sure that a lot of these Russian soldiers are going to defend those positions to the death. And I mean, because some of them, they don't have a choice. They're either going to be to the death because they got killed by the Ukrainian soldier, or they're going to be to the death because they got back, didn't defend it, and then the Russian officer is going to make it so they're dead anyway, right? So I do think that there are Russian soldiers that break upon impact, but there's also war-hardened Russian nationalists. There's also terrified people who want to get back to their families, so they're going to do whatever necessary to not get killed by their commanding officer, depending on how brutal the unit is. And so when you're fighting against that type of brutality and that type of fear, it is not an easy task that the Ukrainians have ahead of them. So I just want to make sure that, and I'm not saying that any of the critiques that you made of the Russian military doctrine is incorrect. I just want to make sure that we don't think that it's like we walk to the Russians, they all go, oh, and like run away, right? A lot of these guys, like these Ruchitz fellas, for example, who have been fighting in the Donbass for 8 years, these are hardened radicals.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Nailed it on the head there. I mean, it's in warfare, there's no guarantees. There's not a guarantee Ukraine is going to win everywhere, right? And people maybe expected that there wouldn't be any losses from the Ukrainian military at all. That's why the Russians so heavily pushed that video of the Bradley infantry fighting vehicles and like the 2 Leopards. They replayed that same video for like a month.
They played that like it was an Indian soap opera, you know, with the 20 million different angles and slowed down and filters.
Yeah, just to have something, because it is what it is, right? But I still, even with all the critiques of the Ukrainian counteroffensive, for example, right now, and like what we were talking about,
we got good news on that though.
Yeah, we do have good news on that. Yeah, successes are happening and breakthroughs are happening, which at this point is great to see. There have been critiques that it's been going too slow and etc., but I feel it's going just as fast as it needs to be, especially with as much as we know on my channel and you personally in your community of how many minds there are out there and what the contributing factors as to why it is taking a little bit longer. But even with the length of time that the Ukrainians have spent trying to get to where they're at now, we're still seeing liberations being made, and also the counteroffensive territory is the entire span of the occupied territory, including Crimea, because they're landing special forces there and they're hitting bases there now. And
I mean, the S-400 getting blown up was already pretty crazy. But the fact 100%. That they could do those special forces landing, and ever since I've seen that, they said it was, Budanov said it was part of an ongoing operation. And the thing is, I love Budanov for this operation for a few reasons. Number one, like, just listening to the guy speak is always a blast. I love the dry humor of Budanov very much. But he's former Spetsnaz, and he got his training doing training Spetsnaz operations in Crimea. Michael Weiss from Yahoo News made a fantastic point. He said, this is like taking a Brer Rabbit and putting him in a Brer Patch, right? When you're talking about this guy managing these types of raids, no wonder he was able to pull this off, right? He has experience here. So I hope it leads to a lot more operations in the future, because Crimea is a logistical hub, and the more chaotic it is, not only does that lessen the morale of the troops there, but it also can really disturb the front line across Zaporozhye and Kherson as well.
Absolutely. And I feel like we're going to be seeing some breakthroughs in that defensive line in the south due to this. I mean, have you been using maps more? You said last week.
I said I would. I've been using it a tiny bit more, but I've been limiting it because I don't want to do the thing where it's like every stream I open up and I'm like, see this 100 feet of land captured today. You know how cool that is. Look at this tree. It's a liberated tree. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I've seen a lot of these places, and I also like. There's only so much like footage of
liberated
just
tree.
Liberated tree. There's only so many footage of like people blowing up that I can deal with in a week. So like having one day where I sit down and do this like on this show is preferred to me, because I just can't do it every day.
Bro, that's mine is every day. So I feel you on that, because some days, that's why I started mixing up even my thumbnails now, because some days I just can't have a map. It's like there's no changes. I'll have a photo of maybe an event, but you know, there's no territorial changes today. I definitely feel you on that one.
Can I make a point? I don't know if I made this point last stream, but it's something I've been thinking about a lot when it comes to how people view these maps. And it's the way people view these maps generally. I feel like people sometimes put too much weight in the maps and just the maps, because something I liked about, I think it was Live Map, which is different from Deep State. Even though Deep State is more detailed, I think it's overall it's better. But what Live Map did better is it was much more user-friendly for seeing exactly what was happening at every different point at the front, where the artillery strikes were happening, where this was blowing up, where helicopters were getting shot down. Where I feel like now, most of the stuff I'm seeing is, oh, this ground was taken, this village was captured. You hear very little about the destruction of equipment, very little about the disturbing of supply lines. There's very little emphasis on that, and I feel like that is affecting how people view the war and media coverage. I feel like if people heard, for every one Ukrainian artillery battery destroyed on the southern offensive, 3 Russian artillery batteries get destroyed, I think that would have an impact on how people view the war. I think if you expressed the amount of money we have spent on the war, for example, and this is true when it comes to the spending angle as well, when you include more information, when you say how much it is of our overall GDP, or how much it is of our overall military spending, or what equipment we're exactly sending. I think the more information you give people, the better informed they are, the more they will support Ukraine. And so I think when we talk about these counteroffensives and judging the status of the war, we need to have a more, I think, all-encompassing outlook outside of just looking at, is this village blue or is it red? You know?
Mm-hmm. 100%. That's how I've actually, you're so true. That's how I've adapted my stream too. Because when the war first started, dude, my whole stream was just literally, I had the live VOA map up, because it would have the pings, also the geolocated pings of all the news stories, or all the videos. They're all geolocated, and they still are, but very less now. So, but also due to operational security risks, right? You don't want to have a bunch of videos of Ukrainian actions, and then the Russians obviously can see that, and they can kind of map out where the Ukrainians are at in real time. But it really did come in handy last year, but now more so this year. I kind of know where things are now, so I'll find things on the internet, and yeah, 100%. Like, we've expanded it. You know, I do go through politics. You know, there's other sources too. Maybe you can talk about this, because you are in Ukraine. You cover Ukraine war, but you also cover tons of other topics too, like on your stream. That's what I want to start doing personally. Not during this stream, because I feel like, me personally, I have a solid thing with Ukraine audience for nightly streams. But like during the daytime though, I want to, you know, kind of hang out and just go through news and kind of venture off beyond Ukraine as well.
Yeah, don't worry. Okay, you should start light though. You need to start with light.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah,
I don't know where to start. Yeah. Perfect. That's the exact topic I was thinking I should start on. That's a topic I want to tackle immediately.
Exactly. The perfect choice. But
oh man.
So I wanted to ask you though. You said you needed to get new body armor. What type of body armor are you looking for?
Oh, first, before we do that, shout out to my community.
I do want to shout out your community.
Yeah, go ahead.
Shout out on my stream.
You have to let them know. You have to let them know
that I did get my body armor. I did get body armor. You guys, I know your guys, like, your community donated about $150 or something like that. All of it together, probably cost $750.
Look at that, yeah.
I got new helmet, which is great, which is now owned DylanBurnsTV. I'm getting some paint, and we're gonna press on the front, and we're gonna put the logo on the side, because you know, we gotta have good branding. That's important. I got a good set of body armor that actually has the I don't know if you can see it on camera.
That's a good plate carrier right there.
You can see it has the trident actually embroidered on the inside, because this is made in Ukraine.
How did you get that? Oh, you got a made in Ukraine one.
I have a fixer, a good Ukrainian fixer that got me to a good shop. I walked in the store, bought it same day, didn't have to wait. All the other stores were telling me a month. Bought it same day through a fixer. Fantastic guy, really godly guy, very nice dude. This is great, not only because these are level 6 plates, but also I got some padding and some body armor for the sides as well, so I can protect the sides of my body. Yep. Very helpful, very good. I got a second plate carrier. This was great, because this was just $20. This was $20, but it's blue. And that's what I wanted. Having something that more clearly is a color of humanitarian work and stuff like that, very helpful. If I ever want to, say, do some humanitarian work quick, and I'm no longer a journalist, I can put this on. This says humanitarian work or humanitarian aid worker in Ukrainian. So this is going to come in helpful as well. So I got a bunch of new stuff that's really helping me out here. And I appreciate everybody who donated at my website, DylanBurns.tv. Thank you. I felt uncomfortable making like a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter, not a Kickstarter, but a GoFundMe or anything like that, because it always feels weird asking for donations when so many people are in such need. But you guys just did it through word of mouth. You guys heard that I needed to buy new body armor and I was strapped for cash, and you guys helped me, and I greatly appreciate it.
That's fucking awesome, man. GG's everyone that contributed there. But myself personally, I gotta order it tomorrow during my break. I have my one vest, but I want to get, so here's mine. Plus I have the 2020 gas mask too, because there are lots of gases that were used on us. So I got this. It's just too big. I want to get a plate carrier like you have. This is more so like a vest, but it also has the side protection. And also these are kind of reflective, and like you had said, probably don't use reflect. Yeah. So I had ordered.
My advice for everyone is don't use reflective anything when you're doing war reporting, because it was bringing unnecessary attention to yourself from like a distance.
Yeah, 100%. That makes sense. So, and minus like when I needed it at nighttime, I needed the police not to shoot at me, but it didn't help. But I was hoping that it was going to help. But yeah, so I mean, I'm going to probably just keep this at home, get the one you have, which is more so.
Does that say your name on it?
Yeah, on the handle.
Oh, that's cool.
I know, right? It's sick. We all had one. So like, it's funny. None of us in Minneapolis, like we weren't like a nucleus of journalists. Like we all had our own thing, but we all kind of got similar armor, and we all had our last names. So in Minneapolis, we all, like during the riots and shit, we all had these on.
Oh, so you're like Power Rangers.
Yeah, basically the media Avengers.
Which Power Ranger color would you be?
I would have been I think I'd be the silver one, or the white Ranger.
Got you. I think I probably would have been pink.
The Pink Ranger?
Probably Pink Ranger.
Dude, I don't blame you. I do not blame you. And then also this guy, look at, I got flashbangs decided to hang out with my head.
Oh,
they somehow, for some reason, flashbangs just came right to my head. I don't know what happened, so it chipped some of the paint off. So I got to get a new one, because I mean, it'll be fine, but it's just kind of ratchet, dude. Like paint is that literally just chipped off right there, so I can't do that, dude. But this will be a backup one I can keep for.
Oh yeah, it's always good to have spares, and you never know when you might be with someone and they might need something.
Right, 100%, literally. So I can't wait. I like getting new equipment, and yeah, I'll be getting a lot closer, and I'll be actually covering a howitzer unit, a D30 howitzer unit.
Oh, that's cool.
It's gonna be cool.
That's awesome. I have tried very hard to cover artillery teams in this country, and I have
maybe you can come with if you're not
I would
busy.
Always love to come with, and if you ever see something I'm doing and you have interest in, please just let me know anytime. I believe freelancers need to stick together.
Same.
Especially into such a aggressive market where we're going to get screwed by any mainstream media company that's going to want our footage or use our footage without permission, or they're going to use our footage without permission and also not credit us, so it's important for us to stick together. Very important for us to stick together. I was going to say something, but I lost it. Ah, dang.
We were talking about you coming with, that you invited me to come with.
Yeah. I have 2 embeds currently that I'm sitting on that could be artillery related. One is a 2-week mega trip to a bunch of major hotspots that me and I believe a Colombian journalist would do together, possibly through a fixer that I know. The other one is an embed in the Kharkiv Oblast with artillery teams that I have tried to do twice and have failed both times, because I get there and every time I get there, the shelling is so bad, 14, 15 different times to get shelled a day, that they have to call it off. So 3rd time's the charm, hopefully, but artillery teams are a very valuable target. So it's difficult to report on them because there's a lot of shoot and scoot stuff. But I want to do a long sit down conversation with the artillery crews, talk to them about their work, talk to them about the status of their earlobes, about their eardrums and stuff like that.
Sure, they got some stories too. That's my strategy, because I mean, I don't have any protections of corporate media or anything like that. I'm completely 100% independent. I don't have anything like that. I'm not even in a press agency, or I've made my own press pass. I did it all on my own. I paved it on my own.
If you need, I gotta tell you, man. Once you get that press accreditation here, things are gonna get 10 times easier, and
I'll get that.
It's not that particularly difficult.
Okay, we'll work on that then. I'll be messaging you if we can work on that.
Just message me. I know I can help you with every state of the paperwork. You got to get like 5 or 6 documents. I know everyone. Just send me a DM. I can help you out.
We'll get that taken care of. My strategy too is also like, hey, I brought you guys a truck. Here's a Kazovac vehicle. Now can I report on you guys a little bit? Like that's my strategy of it until they get to know me a little more, because they have no idea who this dude is really. Like, who's this random dude from Minnesota? Or this American guy, but he brought us a truck. Like, okay, let's talk to him now.
It is a great opener. Food is also a great opener. If you're off duty, alcohol is usually a great opener. Fantastic opener for demining crews, at least for me in my experience.
Alcohol is okay for demining crews. All right.
Yeah, they drank a lot. They drank a lot. And I'll even admit, there were some days where they would cancel demining because the last day they just drank so much. But who's going to walk to the guys who go through the minefields every day, dismantling bombs for 9 to 10 hours a day, right? And say, oh no, you drank a little too much. No one's going to do that.
Literally. Yeah, not at all. No judgments. Well, all right, buddy. I think we'll wrap up here for just tonight. And
we've got one more thing though. We got a big priority.
Oh, okay. What do we got?
I can't believe you forgot this. I can't believe it.
What I forget? What I do?
This is the second time we did this. If we're gonna do it again, do you want to do this again next Friday?
Yeah. If
we're gonna do this again, we gotta give this a show name. We gotta give it a name.
Oh,
we gotta make.
Right.
If it's a podcast, it's a podcast now. You know, if we're gonna do it every week, we gotta call it a show. We gotta give. If we don't give it the respect it deserves, then viewers aren't gonna come in and give it the viewership it deserves. You know.
You're right. 100%. We do have to name it something.
Maybe we should ask viewers. Maybe we should ask viewers to leave a comment or to send in emails or give recommendations. Maybe a poll online. We'll put out a tweet or something. Figure it out. We'll decide in DMs. But I think it would be good for people watching to think of a good idea for what we should call this program here.
I agree, because I always struggle to figure out how to title it anyways in my YouTube stream when I go, because I'm like, discussion stream news with Dylan. Like, I didn't know what to name it. So yeah, 100%. We got to come up with a cool name. I'm with that. 100%.
Awesome.
All right. Well, we'll work on that this week then, and probably maybe unveil it next Friday.
Sounds perfect. Thank you so much for having me on. For my viewers, do you want to shout yourself out quick, and then I'll shout myself out?
Yeah, Mercado Media on YouTube. We're live every night covering the war in Ukraine, starting at 8:15 p.m. Eastern. We're not done either, my audience. We're going to go through some more videos and shit when we're done with Dylan here. But yeah, nightly Ukraine war news. And I'm going back to Ukraine here in September with the NAFO 69th Stiffing Brigade, bringing another vehicle for the soldiers. Thank you. And go ahead and shut yourself up.
Awesome. My name's Dylan Burns. I'm a freelance conflict reporter and Twitch streamer. I do a lot of human stories in Ukraine, going to the frontline communities, talking to people most directly affected by the war. You can find my content, my journalism at DylanBurnsTV. I also recently wrote a report for Offbeat Research. I hope people go read it. I interviewed an anarchist soldier who was displaced from Crimea. Very interesting interview. I'm also going to be releasing this piece I've been talking about for so long now. It's going to be released early next week. It's going to be a deep dive into Russian targeting of civilians in Kherson, targeting of civilian aid workers. The evidence is overwhelming that I think we're presenting. We bring, I think, forward a very good case. We interview over half a dozen witnesses, international law experts. We break down the organizations that were directly involved with the attack on us, which include Wagner-affiliated PMCs. So when it comes to the Prigozhin story, there's an element there. So I hope you guys wait for that next week. It's going to be on my main channel, Dylan Burns TV. I'm working with Offbeat Research. Very happy to. Hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. I know I will.
Absolutely, buddy. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.